Hello everyone and good evening. My name's Don Arleth and welcome to our main edition of World News Tonight here on TVP World. Tonight, our main focus is the visit of the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi to Poland. We'll discuss the outcome of his meetings with Prime Minister Donald Tusk and President Andrzej Duda. That's coming up later towards the end of the program, but first up, let's take a look at tonight's headlines. Operation Kursk continues to pick up steam, but the situation in the Donbass is not looking good for Kyiv. COVID numbers are dangerously growing in Poland. Controversial influencers Andrew Tate and his brother Tristan face new allegations. Poland and India are opening up a new chapter in their history. The prime ministers of the two countries announced today that they are taking their relationship to a strategic level, one of the highest forms of international cooperation. The announcement came during the Prime Minister Modi's visit to Warsaw, the first by an Indian leader to Poland in 45 years.
Narendra Modi and Donald Tusk exchanged niceties at the chancellery of the Polish Prime Minister. But the visit was more than just a courtesy call.
We decided today that we are taking our relations to the level of a strategic partnership. And it's not only by definition. Behind these words is our determination to work closely together in a number of fields.
The Indian Prime Minister expanded on the idea of a tighter cooperation, especially when it came to the economy.
Poland is a leading country in the world when it comes to food processing, so we would like to see Polish companies join our mega food banks currently being set up in India. We could also cooperate in the sectors of water treatment, solid waste management, clean energy and artificial intelligence.
Later in the day, Prime Minister Narendra Modi also met with Polish President Andrzej Duda at the presidential palace. Boasting the title of one of the largest countries in the world and one of the most influential economies in Asia, India has a lot to offer to Poland. The visit also signifies Poland's growing role in the region, as TVP World's guest, Professor Swaran Singh, said.
And I think what is important in this visit is how Poland has been a very important frontline state in dealing with Ukraine crisis. And when India wants to engage with that issue of how can Ukraine crisis be resolved, I think the first stop of Indian Prime Minister in Poland is a very significant step in that sense.
After Modi's visit to Warsaw, the head of the Indian government will travel to Kyiv on Friday. There he will meet with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk hinted at the two leaders potentially discussing a peace plan during their meeting.
I'm very happy that Prime Minister Modi confirmed his engagement in the peaceful, fair and fast end to the war in Ukraine. We're both certain that India can play a crucial role in achieving just that.
India has so far refused to officially condemn the Russian invasion of Ukraine. It is instead aiming to position itself as a mediator between Kyiv and Moscow. The visit of the Indian Prime Minister here to Poland was the perfect opportunity to present the strategic partnership between the two countries, as it comes on the eve of the 70th anniversary of the establishing of diplomatic relations between Poland and India. From Warsaw, TVP World, Kazimierz Łysiak.
3 weeks into its incursion into Russia, Ukraine has seized more ground inside the Kursk region, according to the country's president, Volodymyr Zelensky. Joining us now live from Kyiv, Ukraine's capital, is our correspondent, Oz Chatterjee. Good evening, Oz. Can you tell us a little bit more about this Ukrainian advance?
Yeah, of course. So this was President Zelensky was visiting the Sumy region in northern Ukraine today. That's the region that borders Kursk. And he talked about the incursion being successful in reducing the amount of shelling that was coming into Sumy over the last few months. Now, I'd visited Sumy for TVP World about in March, and the reports there were that the place was being still heavily shelled from across the border. And at the time, the Ukrainians couldn't respond with Western weapons across that border. Now, Zelensky did announce that they had captured new territory, seized another village, but he did not name the village or elaborate further on that. Now, he did speak later on when he returned to Kyiv about what he hopes the intention of the operation is, saying the path to end the war on the terms of an independent Ukrainian state. So they're very much in mind with this operation that it will help them in any position with the future Russian negotiations to give them a stronger hand. Now, we have some other news today. The Russians have seized more ground in Donetsk, taking a village called Mezhove. That's bad news for the Ukrainians. If they were hoping that the operation would help reduce pressure on Donetsk, the Russians are still advancing, small advances, but they are about 10 kilometers now away from a major Ukrainian city of Pokrovsk, which has begun evacuating now for several days. We'll say we do have some breaking news just now in the Kharkiv direction as well. The Ukrainian 3rd Separate Assault Brigade have launched a small operation counter-offensive in the Kharkiv region. Now, this is only them claiming this 3rd Separate Assault Brigade, but they're claiming to have taken about 2 square kilometers of ground in Kharkiv in an offensive today.
All right, Oz Karaji reporting for us live from Kyiv. Thank you very much, and of course, keep yourself safe. Meanwhile, Ukraine is, as Oz was saying, losing land in the east. Evacuations of the frontline city of Pokrovsk have accelerated. Officials are telling residents there to leave now because it will only get worse. At the same time, Ukrainian troops are moving ahead with the Kursk operation in an effort to gain ground and replenish what President Zelensky has called the country's exchange fund.
Zelensky's handshake with the Ukrainian army's commander-in-chief says it all. This is where the successful Kursk operation is being supervised.
Our operation in the Kursk region continues. Our combat work is ongoing and steps are being taken. We control designated areas.
Ukraine has destroyed at least 3 bridges over the same river in the Kursk region. US-manufactured HIMARS rocket systems were used in the attacks.
This is the whole purpose of Ukraine's campaign to bring the war back home to Russians. Russians have been acting like ostriches in the last 3 years. They've been sort of burying their heads in the sand and saying, we don't want to know anything about this war.
Ukraine's rapid incursion into Russia has sent thousands of local residents fleeing the Kursk region. Oleg and his mother were among those who did not make it before the Ukrainian army arrived.
The local officials just got themselves and their families out. There was no organized evacuation. People tried to get out on their own, but failed.
The situation in eastern Ukraine is starkly different. Russia's continued offensive in the Donbas is producing results. Ukraine is losing land. Russian forces are approaching the city of Pokrovsk.
Everyone is in panic. People are running away. I went outside and I was shocked. People had their belongings packed in cardboard boxes. Mass evacuation. I don't know. We don't want to leave, but we have to.
Zelensky has prioritized replenishing what he calls Ukraine's exchange fund, but this came at the cost of losing land in the east.
If the Russians were to take Pokrovsk over the next few weeks, they would essentially have breached all of Ukraine's major defensive lines and caused them very great difficulty. So what the Ukrainians are gambling is that the Russians will take the bait.
The operation in Kursk poses an image problem for the Russian leader Vladimir Putin. Today he accused Ukraine of trying to strike Russia's Kursk nuclear power plant in an overnight attack.
Poland's Parliamentary Committee for European Union Affairs convened today to debate and vote on the country's candidate for European Commissioner, Piotr Serafin. Previously, he served as acting permanent representative of Poland to the European Union and was Donald Tusk's cabinet head when the Polish Prime Minister was the president of the European Council.
All 32 MPs took part in the vote. 20 voted in favor of Serafin's candidacy and 12 voted against. Serafin was tapped as Poland's candidate for European Commissioner by Prime Minister Donald Tusk. The candidacy was then approved by President Duda. It is still unclear which position Serafin would take on if selected, but several high-level officials in Poland say he's likely to be assigned the budget and administration portfolio.
I cannot think of anybody better to be the commissioner for budget, a key portfolio for us.
Asked about which position he feels prepared to take, Serafin said,
"Well, any candidate has to be prepared for any position."
TVP World asked Serafin what he thought were the most important challenges facing the EU right now and what interests Poland ought to prioritize.
There is a war on the European continent, and that continues to be the main challenge. The main challenge that has to be reflected in our continuous support for Ukraine. We should invest more into our defense, both into our defense industries, but also into our defense capabilities.
Serafin currently serves as Poland's permanent representative to the European Union.
When it comes to Serafin's competence and experience, the functions and positions he's held in the past really speak for themselves.
Serafin will now wait to see if Ursula von der Leyen, the president of the European Commission, will entrust him with becoming one of the EU's 27 commissioners.
Humanity's not-so-old foe seems to be making a comeback in Poland. According to medical professionals, COVID, more specifically SARS-CoV-2, has been spotted in an increasingly large number of patients across the country.
Just a few years ago, the COVID-19 pandemic paralyzed the world as humanity was caught off guard by the rapidly spreading disease. Now, just as the world was closing the curtain on the age of COVID, new cases of the dreaded illness have started popping up in the heart of Europe. Masks, tests, drugs and other medical paraphernalia are likely to start disappearing from shelves in Polish pharmacies, as fears of COVID often lead to impulse and excess purchases by most people. Despite this, Poland's Chief Sanitary Inspectorate has said that another mask mandate is highly unlikely, but will recommend wearing them anyway.
We should most definitely wear masks in public spaces. This is particularly true for the people that are already sick, so they don't infect others, whether with COVID or the common flu.
Putting fears aside, however, are we really going to have to go through yet another COVID outbreak? And just how large of an impact will it have?
This new wave suggests that some of the people that were vaccinated in the past have lost their immunity. Vaccinations should be carried out more often, especially when it comes to people specifically vulnerable to COVID.
With Poland reporting over 1,000 new cases of COVID a day, all we can do for now is strap on our masks, thoroughly wash our hands, and have cough medicine on standby.
Controversial influencer Andrew Tate and his brother Tristan have been taken into custody as part of a new investigation. The brothers are already facing charges for forming an organized criminal group, child trafficking, human trafficking, and a sex act with a minor.
Romania's crime agency raided the Tate brothers' residence on Wednesday morning. Andrew and Tristan Tate were detained for 24 hours and will remain under house arrest for 30 days.
For the moment, there is no status in the file. That is why I can tell you absolutely nothing other than the fact that there is a house search warrant, as you already know from the press release.
Romania's crime agency also revealed that their investigation involves accusations of setting up an organized criminal group, trafficking of minors, human trafficking, sexual intercourse with a minor, influencing police statements, and money laundering. As was the case during his detention in 2023, Tate decried the investigation as a conspiracy to silence him.
We live in an empire of lies, and I've explained this at length before, and their goal is to punish the truth tellers because we are not their allies, and we are...
The brothers were first detained in December 2022 alongside 2 Romanian women and spent 3 months in jail before being released under judicial supervision while awaiting trial. All 4 were charged with rape, human trafficking, and forming an organized crime group to sexually exploit women. The men reportedly used the illusion of a romantic relationship to force 34 victims into making online pornography, which brought proceeds of close to $3 million. The prosecutor in the case did not speak to the media. A former kickboxer, Andrew Tate first gained notoriety in 2016 as a Big Brother contestant. He was removed from the show when a video of him beating a woman with a belt emerged. Tate then rose to prominence as an influencer of the so-called manosphere. Dubbed the king of toxic masculinity by his critics, he has been widely condemned for spreading controversial content.
People think it's a small one. Oh yeah, they control the...
The war in the Middle East continues unabated. The IDF and Hezbollah are increasingly exchanging fire, and Hamas is still reluctant to make a deal on the exchange of hostages. Meanwhile, another player has entered the game following an Israeli strike on the Lebanese city of Sidon.
Missiles rip through the skies above Lebanon with a loud roar, leaving clouds of smoke behind them and destruction in their wake, heading for the Golan Heights controlled by Israel. This has become an increasingly common sight over the last few weeks, with Hezbollah and the IDF exchanging blows, endangering the lives of all civilians in the region.
Some of the residents want to leave, others are patriots who want to stay. But it cannot continue this way. Every time a door shuts, it makes us think it's an explosion. This time, it wasn't just a door shutting, but a serious strike that cost us a lot.
Hezbollah strikes on the Golan Heights follow a wave of attacks carried out by the IDF deep inside Lebanon. One such strike reached the southern port city of Sidon, where Israeli missiles found a target who was a part of an organization which, until now, wasn't considered a major player in this war. A commander of the military wing of the Palestinian faction of Fatah. With yet another militant group expected to join the fighting soon, many fear that the Middle East is heading towards all-out war.
Over the past 3 weeks, tensions have been at their highest peak. The urgency of de-escalating tensions cannot be overstated. As the Secretary General has said, all efforts should lead to a return to calm across the blue line.
Minister, how are you? Welcome to Doha.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has been hard at work trying to secure a ceasefire deal for Gaza, the biggest inflammatory point in the entire Middle Eastern conflict. However, for now, neither side seems eager to reach a compromise. Despite the many calls for peace, or at least a ceasefire, the conflict in the Middle East is likely to keep escalating with each volley of missiles.
And we return to Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to Warsaw, which marks a historic occasion. Now the question is, can it open up new opportunities for Polish businesses?
In theory, India is the biggest market in the world, with almost 1.4 billion consumers. However, when it comes to hard numbers, this market is still untapped by Polish companies. In 2010, exports were just 0.2 billion euros. By 2023, this figure had risen to 1.6 billion. Despite this growth in absolute terms, India's share in Poland's total exports remains minuscule, accounting for just 0.5% of total exports in 2023. This is one of the reasons Patryk Kugiel, senior analyst at the Polish Institute of International Affairs, warns that Poland needs to step up its game.
The trade figures are underperforming, disappointing to a large extent. I think we are not using the full potential of cooperation. We are talking about the 5th largest economy in the world.
This visit could lay the groundwork for future collaborations in key industries.
This is very important to have this kind of political umbrella to help our business people to explore and enter the Indian market.
For Indian businesses, Poland offers a valuable entry point into the European market, while Polish companies could benefit from access to India's rapidly growing economy. The timing of Modi's visit is crucial, given the current geopolitical landscape in Europe.
And now here to break down Prime Minister Modi's visit here to Poland, I'm now joined by political analyst Niranjan Marjani. Hello, and thank you very much for joining us on World News tonight.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Yes. Now, I'd like to start off about what's being talked about in the Indian press. To be precise, the Indian Express, they wrote an article that has been very fascinating from our point of view, saying that Modi's visit will plug a missing link, and that is Central Europe in India's European policy at a time when Middle Europa has returned to the center stage of a great power conflict. So from the Indian perspective, is Poland really this key area in Europe that needs to be addressed? It needs to be part of Prime Minister Modi's policy towards Europe moving forward?
Yes, I do think Poland is very important for India. not just from a bilateral perspective, but also from overall India's engagement with Europe. And like you mentioned about that article, which says, I would like to say, yes, India and European countries, and in particular India and EU, they do have very close engagements. But if we look at India's relations across Europe, then I would say they are not even. India enjoys strong ties with few countries in Europe like France, Germany, and UK. But if we look at India's ties with other countries, then they are not as strong. They are still, we can say, in an emerging stage. So from this perspective, I think Prime Minister Modi's visit to Poland is important, and it would give a boost to not just India's ties with Poland, but also it would increase India's outreach to Central and Eastern Europe, which is a missing link in India's foreign policy. And if we look at how India has been engaging with Europe, then we can see that Prime Minister Modi in particular has been taking steps to engage with the countries, increase India's engagement with those countries with which earlier we had very little interactions. The same was evident when last year Prime Minister Modi visited Greece in the Mediterranean region in southern Europe, and this year, earlier last month in fact, Prime Minister visited Austria, and now he is visiting Poland. So yes, India is taking steps to plug this gap in its foreign policy, and for that I believe Poland is one of India's important partners in Europe.
Now, the Prime Minister has announced earlier today that they would engage in a strategic partnership, and that this is actually quite significant. Just based on what little we know at this point in time, what do you think that can entail?
That can entail many things. I think both India and Poland are looking to strengthen their ties, and although both the countries have had very strong historical relations, but in the contemporary context, still India and Poland relations, I would say they need to work a lot together, and there is a lot of scope for cooperation in economic as well as in strategic areas. In particular, I believe both the countries can cooperate in the area of defense. They could explore joint defense production, and also India could benefit from Poland's defense industry, as it is constantly looking to diversify its defense imports, defense acquisitions, and also at the time when India is focusing on increasing indigenous defense production, I think Poland can be a valuable partner for India as far as joint defense production is concerned. So I think we are looking at defense as a particular area, and also I would like to say last year India, along with several countries of Middle East and Europe, they launched India Middle East Europe Economic Corridor, which is a connectivity initiative from India to Europe, and even in this project, I believe Poland can play an important role. So yes, India and Poland have a lot to look forward to in the area of strategic cooperation.
At a time when the United States is pivoting east, where there's more scrutiny of China over their support for Russia during the ongoing invasion of Ukraine, do Indians see this as an actual opportunity, if you will, to be able to exploit and to be able to fill somewhat of a gap of investment in business ties, and try and fill that gap that has traditionally been filled by China? Does that present a new opportunity for India?
Yes, it does present a new opportunity for India, because China is not just a competitor, but also, if I may use the word, is an adversary, because we do have our share of challenges, and we do have our share of conflicts. So Yes, countering China is one of India's objectives while engaging with different countries. And Central and Eastern Europe, this sub-region of Europe is of particular interest to many powers, and particularly many extra regional powers, and China is one of them. For India, it has been one of the lesser focused areas in its foreign policy. So India would look forward to engaging with this region more. And in particular, India would also like to offer itself as an alternative to China, where when it comes to trade or investments. And if we look from Poland's perspective or from Central and Eastern European countries' perspective, then it's also an opportunity for these countries to diversify their engagements and not just depend on one country. So engaging with India is beneficial for Poland as well as its neighbors, and of course for India also it increases its outreach to the lesser engaged regions, as well as it gives India a more balanced outreach in Europe, I believe.
Now, Prime Minister Modi is going to Ukraine tomorrow. I'm sure he heard a bit about the Polish perspective on what's going on over there. Poland tends to be one of the best, staunchest advocates of Ukraine since this full-scale invasion. And so I'd like to ask about that. What is the current view from an Indian perspective on that conflict? And what do you think Prime Minister Modi's role will be as maybe a potential moderator? What do you think his stance will be in this conflict and going to Kyiv?
I think Prime Minister Modi has made his stand clear, or rather has made India's stand clear even on quite a few occasions previously, like when he told President Putin this is not an era of war. So, and India supports dialogue and diplomacy and not war. Now, as far as Prime Minister Modi's visit to Ukraine is concerned, then I think there are several perspectives to this visit. One is, I would like to continue from my previous point, is like this is the first time an Indian Prime Minister is visiting Ukraine. So it is concomitant to India's policy for past about 1 decade to reach out to the countries with which India did not have much interaction before. And after Modi became Prime Minister, he has taken steps to increase India's outreach to several countries. So if I can name a few countries like Australia, Fiji, or even a shift we saw in India's engagements with the Gulf states, increase in strategic cooperation, or for that matter with Central Asian countries. So I think from one perspective we should look at this visit that India is looking to expand its engagements with different countries. That is one perspective. But yes, this visit comes at a time when a war is going on in Ukraine, and there has also been direct and indirect pressure on India to take sides, which India has resisted until now. But I think Modi would more focus on developing India's bilateral ties with Ukraine. There is a lot of scope there as well to strengthen India's trade and strategic cooperation with Ukraine. From Ukrainian perspective, I believe ties with India are beneficial because it would help Ukrainian economy as well, which is, I think, facing challenges due to this war, which has been going on for more than 2 years. So engagements with India do benefit Ukraine, and I think President Zelensky would look forward to greater ties, greater interactions with India, and particularly I believe, just like Poland, even India-Ukraine relations can benefit from strategic cooperation, and in particular Ukraine's defense industry. So I think those would be the key points in Prime Minister Modi's visit. If India would play a role of a moderator or a peacemaker in the future, well, that remains to be seen. But India's engagements do point towards that. If there is any opportunity in the future, if not immediately, but then India is in a position to play that role, and if there is anything India could do, any suitable role that India gets to play, then I do think that India will have a major role, because India remains one of the few countries in the world that has close ties with both the West as well as with Russia. So I think India is a better place to play that role. But I think that would be, we would have to wait for some time. I don't think it would be immediately.
Right away, yes. Niranjan Marjani, political analyst, thank you very much for joining us and discussing this important trip of the Indian Prime Minister. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
And that concludes this edition of World News Tonight. Thank you for joining us. And of course, stay with us for more here on TVP World.